We'll call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Polly.
Present.
Trustee Lappin.
Here.
Clerk Palovich here. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Here.
Trustee Kroll.
Excused absence.
Trustee Reiner.
Here.
Supervisor Skibby.
Here. At this point in time, is there any corrections, additions, subtractions to the agenda? I have one addition, that would be new business item number 9. Put it down, will be the IAFF ratified TA. That is a tentative agreement.
I'd like to ask that you consider moving the public comment to before the last public comment to before the closed session. Just so if there is any public comment, quite often we lose it if we go into closed session and those folks that have comment for us, non-agenda comment, we lose them. If there is any, I'd like to just have that.
Okay, I'll make that concession that given the fact that we have a closed session, that we will move public comment after new business 9. Are there any other additions, corrections, substitutions to the amended agenda as presented? If not, I'd entertain a motion to move forward with the amended agenda as presented.
So moved.
Well, we got a motion and support. That's
Who
trustee Polly.
supported?
Trustee Polly on the support. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Agenda has been adopted. This is the first opportunity for public comment. If there is any public comment online, please use the bottom taskbar or text a message so that we can identify you and listen to your public comment. Again, this is the first opportunity for public comment. We have one online participant. And if there's any need to utilize a first public comment for any of the current agenda items, now is the time. And seeing no public comment online and none in person, we'll move forward with the consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that needs to be pulled for further discussion? Yes,
I have a couple of questions.
okay.
Oh my. The University of Michigan
Yes.
request to participate. Did you maybe just tell us what that is? I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, well, and we get quite a few from Big Brother asking to participate. Lastly, it's been a lot of, let me get into, I haven't even looked at that correspondence since I gave it to Michelle for the agenda, so let me.
It sounds like to me something we're working on kind of now with shoreline.
Yes, yep, it is. So it's the continued shoreline. This has been an ongoing project since the high water event a couple years ago in northern Lake Huron. Looking at and coinciding with the upcoming, I believe it to be July determination of new floodplain coordinates for insurance purposes, so FEMA. So some of the federal monies were allocated to university to really do studies at the municipal level, looking at the zoning ordinance, what setbacks are from riparian zones, et cetera, et cetera. So this is continuation. I participated 4 times with the professor, so it's just another study.
But one of them,
Yes, sir.
the letter from Elizabeth Littler.
Yep.
I just wondered, this came in, but has anybody looked at what she said in her letter? Has anything been followed up on any of those items?
I think both Michelle and I have read this was the email that we got.
Email letter. Yeah.
I
We
just thought there were
respond.
some pretty good facts, and I just wondered if there's anything that's thinking about going down the road and looking at it, or.
An invasive species. Some of them were realistic and some of them were far from. So it was, some of them she had a couple decent points on. And that's when, especially with plants and how they're planted. I guess that how far into a site plan review do you do it with a subcontractor for implementation of landscape design?
I saw the Starbucks and the Meyer and I'm like, well. are
We have
telling
no
people how
control.
Deep to plant a tree?
Yeah, I mean, what we could do to address this quite effectively would be that we add an amendment to ordinance 142 that moving forward that here's a sponsored township plant list, but then the problem is that plant list will contradict MDOT, who has a principal corridor and.
And we potentially increase liability?
Well, hey, God bless it.
Leave
You know,
that alone.
trees stop vehicles before they hit.
I was just
Fences.
basically concerned that this was brought in, received and then
But-
just,
No,
We responded to it.
yeah.
you responded to it.
And
Yes.
she's
Oh, good. Okay.
also, she's
Yes.
also active. She's on the steward board for the Misery Bay.
I have
And having planted some trees improperly, Steve, I kind of know.
Yeah.
But failed to follow my wife's advice and planted them too deep, so they all died.
Yeah. I rest.
So it does happen.
Rest my
So-
case.
With that question being asked, are there any other comments, concerns, anything that needs to be pulled for further discussion from the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to move forward and approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Further discussion?
I only had one thing, it
Yeah.
jumped in a little quick. On the Aldi's, there was a question about a sidewalk. And that would have to look like that had to go back to the developer of Crittenden Court. About a side,
So-
Norm raised that.
Yeah, I think that was Norm's question at the planning commission. And so. Typically, what happens in a private development as Crittenden Court is, even the utilities that were brought forth back in the day. Were privately sponsored, and then conveyed, through easement to the township.
Yeah.
And so. In regards to the remaining parcels, I believe there's 4 remaining, parcels in there. And as much as we want to support and both of the frontage lots, that being Hampton Inn on the west side and then the proposed Aldi's. Is they have in their site plan bypass non-motorized access to our existing bypass, but there is nothing currently on Crittenden Court.
I just wondered because I didn't know that there was any, I didn't know that there was. What entity owns Crittenden Court now?
It's privately held.
Yeah, but I knew that, but I just wondered if it was.
No,
Well,
no, and so the utilities are owned by us.
Okay,
And so that's about as far as our ties go, and
Yeah.
we have water and sewer customers.
Yeah.
On that short stretch.
Do we have a water sewer going down that?
Yes, we do. Yep. Yep, there's a sewer lift station just below the principal sign. In the median of the progressive crest of Crittenden Court. And then we also have a water main that now appropriately stops where it should have stopped about 20 years ago. Yes.
I did at the planning commission meeting, I did mention that. The Aldi's, if we could put a sidewalk down the Crittenden Court side and. They were not for that because it really wasn't quite the room and the other side would be better because. The sidewalk going there actually goes to nothing where the other side potentially could go to something. And I think the hotel might be looking at that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to steer them in that direction because it would make the most sense if there is to be walking traffic. It would be on the west side of that private, but it falls solely on the square onus of the landowner at that point in time. One other update to the site plan of Hampton Inn is I put them in contact with Alpena Power Company and they're looking at an amendment to add some EV charging stations in their parking lot. So. With that being said, I think that's a fair amount of discussion on the consent agenda, but if there's any other, I'd love to have it. Otherwise, roll call.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes,
Trustee Lappin.
yes,
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward into old business, we're setting up Tim for the next 2 ordinance adoptions. So first is, hey, Tim, would you like to?
Sure. At the last township board meeting, the board voted to introduce
ordinance number 153, which is a local officials compensation commission ordinance. Which, as we discussed at the last meeting, really tracks closely the statute that sets out the requirements and rules for establishing such a commission. And at the next meeting or at a special meeting, we'll go through the steps of appointing the commission, or the supervisor will appoint the commission and the township board will confirm the appointments. And that'll get us started. And then I'm envisioning Nathan and I having the initial meeting with them for me to help them get on track. And I've got some sample documents and give them the statute and give them the amount of time they have to do their work. And so that should get them started. So tonight, we're looking for a motion to adopt ordinance 153. The next item on the agenda is, because the statute requires then a resolution to get the process started for some reason. So, and an overkill, but we'll follow the statute. So the first item of business would be a motion to adopt ordinance 153.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table.
Support.
Supported by
Robert.
Who supported it?
pretty split.
You can give us.
The guy-
You're getting it, Russ.
The bald headed guy.
The greater of the baldness.
Let's see.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion and support. Further discussion on the ordinance 153. Seeing none, roll call please.
Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes,
Clerk Palovich, yes. Supervisor Skibby.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the next item on the agenda is the resolution which implements the ordinance. And that, the only variable there is at the bottom of the first page. Because the statute requires it, we need to lay out a rule stating when the commission will meet. Be it further resolved, Charter Township Board of Trustees directs the initial commission members to convene for the commission's initial meeting no later than blank 2023. If we adopt or appoint the members at the July meeting,
It's 45 days from then. Is that the first meeting?
they've got to, and let me get my head on straight there. The commission shall meet for not more than, this is my email to get my head straight here. The commission shall meet for not more than 15 session days in each odd numbered year. Shall make a determination within 45 calendar days of the first meeting.
Oh,
It's got to be done during this year. So we want to say that they need to meet by no later than September 1st, something like
So it
that,
has to be done within this calendar year or within our fiscal year?
within
Calendar.
our calendar. Let's see.
no, it just says calendar.
that's a good question.
This is 45
Oh.
calendar days.
Well, it would have to be.
Well, calendar
It would
days.
have to be
Yeah.
our year because we're gonna make,
Oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna make those
Well,
recommendations
Let's
at the.
get down to it here with the statute.
at the
At the-
Annual meeting.
Right, in March, right.
Commission shall meet for not more, this is from the statute now. So the commission shall meet for not more than 15 session days in each odd numbered year. And shall make a determination when
So it's a calendar year.
It's a calendar year within 45 calendar days of the first meeting. Yeah, odd numbered years, and that's. I think maybe with elections, and that's what they're looking at, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The clerk appreciates that.
yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
Trustee Paul.
So then the question,
Just 1 second, trustee Brian, yes.
Jim, and so I read this before, it says in each odd numbered years, that means they can only meet in odd number of years?
Yep.
So they can only change the. Or do whatever they want to do for recommending. Pay every other year.
Yeah, and then it doesn't decrease your existing salaries or the so in a sense, it's for after the election.
Principal.
Why
So-
couldn't, I'm sorry.
So they could make a recommendation yet this year that could go into place next year on April 1st.
Right.
And then they gotta wait till 25 to do it again.
To meet again.
To
They
meet
meet on
again.
odd years.
So the wage would be set for 2 years.
Yes.
Correct. Yes. okay.
Yep.
I'm wondering if Tim, if the 45 days, if we. I mean, here's, I guess what I'm wondering is, will they have enough time to do whatever they have to do I assume interview some folks or whatever
Sure.
they do.
Do some digging.
Between July and September 1st. Maybe we should give them a little longer. But they still
Well,
have to have it done
this-
before the end of the year.
That the date that we're picking is the date by which they meet for the initial time.
Okay,
And then they've got
45 days.
45
Okay.
days.
all right.
Yeah,
That
so,
makes.
so I guess giving them enough time in case there's logistics, scheduling, but they can meet earlier than that. Just no later than, for example, September
Gotcha.
1st.
Any other questions?
What would they do within that time? So if the ordinance says that they'll meet by September 1. What do they do between today and September 1?
They could meet, if we get them appointed July, whatever, they could meet the following week if they
Okay.
wanted to.
Okay, but they can't make their recommendation until.
No,
45
not
days.
till their work's done.
All
Yep.
right, gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
And my expectation is they'll want to at least probably individually interview at least the permanent members, if not all the at large.
I think they probably want to do some.
Looking at other stuff.
The candidates are
Looking at
gonna
other.
look over, yeah.
Just internet searches, I found other compensation commissions around the state, so I'll give them that information too, if they want to call a chairperson on another commission and say, you know, what are the tips? Yeah, what do we do?
Any other questions for Tim regarding the resolution?
Well, I'll put in September 1st, 2023 in the blank spot, and so it would be a motion to adopt this resolution to implement local officials compensation commission ordinance.
We have a motion to that effect.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yeah.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes.
Kind of disappointed you didn't read it to us.
You always hate when I, whereas, you don't want any more whereas.
All right.
Okay.
We keep it.
Moving forward, before us, new business item 1 is lighting conversion quotes. I was able to track down 2. And the 2 before us this evening are one's from Omega and one is from Thunder Bay Electric.
Are these for the same thing or different?
Is I did the same walkthrough, pointed out the exact same lights. Same as same can get, with the exception in the Thunder Bay Electric, there was one addition. That was asked to be added by some of the staff, was to have option 1, a dimming control feature on lights. Outside of that, this is apple to apple.
Dimming control feature for all the lights?
No, just for a couple of the offices,
Okay.
but
It's me. What?
So let me ask you this.
Yes.
These LED type lights.
yes.
Does a dimming control?
So there's 3 different functions nowadays with newer LED lights. You actually have internally control right on the light, typically of having 4 different variants of control right on the light. Dimming control gives a plethora more opportunity for variability, I suppose. It was an ask, and so I had them quote it. As you will also see is with the quote that was presented by Thunder Bay Electric. They also do all the paperwork for potentially UL rebates. And so,
Anyway, my question
yes,
is it doesn't impact like the baluster or anything like that, that it's not gonna put any unnecessary wear and tear on them to.
no, I think that Mr. Madrinsky, when that was mentioned to him, he would have just probably laughed and said, that's probably a fairly idiotic idea.
Oh,
I would want to know, but he did not laugh or say that was a fairly idiotic idea.
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Well, no, I don't know. I'm not.
Prefer to be referred to as a cerebral pygmy.
I know it's your preferred nomenclature. Yes, no.
Does that include these lights?
These have already, this is the largest principal room that's already gone through an LED converter.
I was gonna say, this has already been done, so.
Yeah, no, this is the front entryway, the treasurer's office, not the old assessing office. Coming into this entryway, that light, replace that light in a different location. And then down the hallway to what was the third iteration of the exterior door. And so. Principally hallways, treasurer, clerk, supervisor's office
Assessment, I mean, not
Not
building.
and building, but yeah, so.
Does it include the lobby area where customers go in to pay?
Yes,
too?
the one light that's
That's
on the
right.
opposite side of the wall, every light,
Okay.
and like I said,
I
I
just
took
wanted to ask.
both companies on the identical. tour,
Yeah, it's quite a price difference.
Pointing at the identical lights, so
But we're not doing the assessing, the old assessing up?
not at this point, because they
They're right
didn't have
next to
time to
each
draw it,
Okay.
and so.
Is this a
Yeah.
necessary thing or just because we want to do?
Some of them are definitely necessary, and at the same time, when we look at what potential savings are, just the consumption.
Is it noticeable?
Yes,
Payback is
That-
really,
entryway is horrible.
Hmm?
The entryway is horrible.
but the point is
I mean,
that the
Electrical.
Cost wise.
electric
I'd
consumption.
have to break that out,
Significantly
because
less.
our bills are so.
I think we did notice a difference when we went to these, but these aren't on all the time.
And you'll also notice that not only you won't replace them as often.
Yeah, and trust me, I mean.
Nathan who
the
replaces
building and
lights
grounds,
daily.
I mean, I change out enough bulbs that. It's not worth buying another box of bulbs. So, it would be my recommendation out of, to move forward with, the Thunder Bay, Electric, quote that's provided.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table, to move forward with the quote provided by Thunder Bay Electric. Is there support?
I'll support it.
It's been moved and supported. Now, I guess point of clarification to your motion, sir, is, did you give any consideration to the
Option one.
option one, which was, a dimming, which was,
I understand it's $200, it's slightly over.
A cost per dimmer is $150.
Per fixture.
Yeah,
yeah, it's not a cheap little,
It's $200.
What is it recommended to be useful?
Where would
Then
they,
what?
where would the dimmers be?
Yeah, where? would
I
that-
think, there was a request for building department. Because in that office, I think the argument is there's no wall, so you have twice as many lights. And then, was it in? I don't
it
know.
wasn't me.
couldn't remember if it was.
Why would you?
Okay, I was just
Okay.
double checking that. Wasn't anybody in the clerk's
I'm not
office.
throwing-
If I catch anybody sleeping in there, but they.
So really, there's.
So I think
guess there's one ask, and that was on the building department. Yes.
Those of you that can't sleep without a nightlight.
And it would be in the office, not in the hallway? I mean, she wants it in the.
Over her office. Yeah.
Why would you
Well-
dim the hallway?
Yeah, the hallway's the hallway.
My thought was no, but yeah, but.
I just, it's your motion.
Yeah.
So if your motion.
So your motion is for the $3,160.
That's right, yeah, I
Okay.
should have said that. and,
Just pointing clear into the support, you're good with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
The only other question I had is we have budgeted.
Yeah, we
It was-
have-
The line item wasn't mentioned on here, but yeah,
It is
Yeah, it is.
on the top.
Maintenance
it is in
and
the
repair
agenda.
buildings.
Oh, look at you.
Building 265-931. So, we have a motion and support, further discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Trustee Reiner,
Yes,
trustee Polly,
Yes,
trustee Lappin,
Yes.
clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward on to, our annual subscription of MTA. See, the math is, it's gone up, 10%, from last year. And so, this year's, dues in total are $7,318. That has been selected. Is there a motion to move forward with a membership to Michigan Townships Association for $7,318? If not, I'd entertain any other motion on the floor.
well, I think I'd like to hear from the full-time board members.
There is.
Supervisor Value.
I mean, from my position, I use it. There's a couple key people that I lean on. through that organization, and they are invaluable. And there is good topics and conversation in the magazines that are pretty relevant. I think at some point in time, their annual costs and then their annual event, they need to give some consideration to finding a plateau of costs. Because I think this year's MTA, if a representative from this board went with lodging included, was between 5 and 6. It was it was not a cheap.
Between 5,000 and 6,000.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had
With travel,
2,000, then
the
you had room
conference.
and board, and then you have any other ancillary meals.
Expensive.
It's a hindrance, I think, to smaller municipalities. But they do have some amazing services. I can't really slant that.
And they are really fat. I'm sorry.
It's steep.
It says that we're level 3. Because we have a taxable value of between 290 and 599. Where are we on that spectrum?
Real and personal.
I don't know, it just says taxable value.
Actually, I just got that. I printed it yesterday. Real and taxable is $580 million. Real is, I'm trying to remember that figure. Just shy of 5.
So we're right at the top of level 3. So next year, it's likely that we could go to level 4, which would be another increase.
That'd be pretty awesome. 4. Don't you want to?
Looking our way to DEFCON 5.
And does this include, or is it extra money for this extra thing they put in there, the subscription?
We have to pay extra for
Yeah.
that.
We have to, and we don't.
We don't.
Is that the premium pass?
One subscription, it says, provides online learning for your entire township. Then they tell you over here on the right hand side, fine print that, but there's extra money.
$1,900.
Yeah. Yep. So, yes and no. It is, sorry, Mr. Bowen.
One thing about the association, they do a lot of things behind the scenes at the Capitol, I believe that's very
It's a lobby.
important for us as a township that we don't see. And we didn't have them, we probably wouldn't be getting some of the things we're trying to get done.
Yeah, that's,
Mhm.
their pack is probably one of their strongest, their educational component and their lobbying. For the rural communities, it may be offsetting the cost that smaller communities can't attend, but.
And I've also, anytime I've ever called there, I've always got information that was always beneficial.
Yes, Laura.
Well, and at my conferences too, for the Michigan Municipal Chargers Association, they always did a presentation and always talked about the latest House bills, Senate bills, and did updates and what's coming down the pipe and stuff. I just have one more question. Just on the distribution, the allocation of where it's coming from. I was just curious, like,
It copies last year's. And it's
okay,
who
I was
has
just
money.
curious. Who had, oh, okay. I just wondered why building was only.
Yeah,
that and
because
we
like
were-
some of us were completely drained. of it.
I was just curious, because,
You had the most, yeah.
yeah, that's why I was.
You're looking for a motion to.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to pay the annual MTA dues for $7,318.
We have motion and support.
Supported by trustee
Foley.
Polly.
Further discussion. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward in the agenda. Are some budget adjustments for both the general fund and the water fund.
Do you want me to talk about?
Yes,
them?
by all means.
The first two are in the assessing department. It is to pay the unemployment for
Ms. Braun.
Miss Braun. We have not paid any of it yet. We've just gotten billed for it. She's done collecting unemployment and now we get billed for it. So that's what that adjustment for bypass maintenance, Nathan, that was.
That's for an upcoming topic. That way we can put adequate funding into the bypass maintenance for business item 5.
And then the next page is needed to transfer the money, ARPA funds to pay for the cost of the water tower.
Right.
The professional services,
You took it out of professional services and moved it to,
yeah, no, but I mean, why did that go down?
Which one are we talking about?
Professional and
seven,
contractual
two,
services.
577.
Oh, because we're taking that money to put in salary payable to pay the unemployment, because we're gonna,
But I mean, wasn't that a 300,000 agreed upon dollar amount?
No,
Oh.
no,
Oh,
no, no, his annual fee, that
all right,
was
you
funded
answered,
adequate, yeah.
all right, you answered my question.
So with that, any other questions to the budget adjustments? Otherwise, I can entertain a motion to allow myself to move forward with making such budget adjustments.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table to move forward with the budget adjustments. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
trustee Lappin,
Yes,
clerk Palovich, yes, treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Reiner,
Yes.
trustee Polly,
Yes.
supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward into the Policy and Procedure Committee manual update. Laura, you want to take?
Sure. Policy procedures met on May 5th and trustee Foley had brought some clarification he wanted on the financial report section. So we kind of cleaned that up so it matches the names of what our reports are actually called. And we updated the credit card use policy section. We did a credit card holder agreement. And added a change or made a change to the smoking section.
That was the main meeting.
Yes, that was the main meeting, and then we met again in June and adopted a drug policy, which is also attached. So.
my
all of that.
question is under the drug policy one.
Yes.
One thing that I read in here, I'll try to find it. It effectively said that if, well, I didn't quite understand the substance abuse amnesty program. Thought that was somewhat interesting. Apparently you get a do-over somewhere along the line if you come clean. I mean, if you say, I got a problem.
It's been fairly out of, I'd say, 5, 10, 15 years. been
Yeah, no,
pretty commonplace.
I'm sure this is all templated. So the one area that I wondered about, I gotta find it here. I think it basically said, and I apologize that I didn't highlight it. It essentially said, if I'm reading it properly, that if I admit effectively to having a drug or alcohol problem, that the township has some sort of a burden to help me to seek
Talking about
some sort of counseling or drug rehab or whatever it might be. And it sounded like that was on the expense of the township.
Is it the employer sponsored events? From time to time, the township will sponsor social and business related?
No. This was
Are
a,
you talking about into
This
page
was-
2 of the drug policy? Under title Substance Abuse Amnesty Program?
no, I wish I would have, maybe somebody who's got a background on this can help me a little bit, but years and years ago, I worked for a company that had language in their policy, that if an employee came forward and said, I got a problem, that effectively the employer was on the hook to pay for all of those costs. And it seems to me that that's not a budgeted item, but somebody comes forward. I'm sorry, I wish I could find where I read it.
And we may or may not have somebody that could shed some light on it. Atypical, but Ms. Mills.
I
I have not had the opportunity to review the policy, so this is speaking high level. My experience with this on the labor and employment arm of it is typically we see language like you're describing as a way to encourage employees to come forward before there's a problem in the workplace. Meaning it's to just differentiate between I have a series of tardiness or other impairment issues that occur on the job, and then I'm pleading for assistance from you because I have an addiction problem. So it's an encouragement prospect. I am not aware of any actual legal obligation upon the employer to take on that cost unless you commit yourself to it. So again, I would defer to the exact language of the policy.
Okay.
You will see sometimes language like that in reference to CDL license holders. There are, of course, many layers. I'm sure you know, Trustee Lappin, as well as I do, that there are many layers to those obligations under federal regulations. But here under non-CDL holders, this would be only an obligation if you took it upon yourself.
Yeah, there was just something that I read, and doggone it, I apologize for not highlighting it, but it had exceptions to it. So you couldn't say, for example, I have a problem and that's why I have 8 pounds of cocaine in the trunk that I'm gonna try to sell. to
Correct.
somebody.
It's not a get
So
out of
that-
jail free card.
Yes, exactly. And so it got to, it just said, as I was reading it, I'm like, boy, is this subjecting the township to what could be a very expensive process of rehabilitating someone? And so I would just encourage us to take a close look at that. And if I'm wrong, great. But there were exceptions to it. Like I said, the selling of drugs or the 3rd and 4th and 5th offense kind of stuff. There were all these sort of get out of jail free type cards that didn't really apply.
So, and I don't know if this is the section, but it could be subsection C, which is the amnesty program is not available to employees involved in the selling, distribution of
Yes.
illegal drugs. So employees eligible to participate in the program will be required to enter into a return to work contract containing a treatment rehabilitation program. Employees required to participate in an inpatient treatment program will be eligible to utilize accrued sick leave and vacation pay during such treatment programs, but will not otherwise be eligible for payment of wages.
Okay. Well,
So the continued fringe benefit eligibility is covered under the provisions of this policy.
all right, well, then maybe that's what I read, and that obviously clarifies that, but I was just afraid that we were gonna
Yeah,
potentially set ourselves up for something that would be. a big,
Yeah, this
big
is actually
expense.
the template from Alpena County.
Okay,
It's not intended to be something that we would pay for, except to provide them time. Sometimes it's gonna be on their own, that they unpaid time,
yeah,
but they can use their PTO or whatever.
that totally makes sense, that obviously we're trying to help that individual get over a tough period.
And I was in an office where we specifically had to implement the policy. And we followed it pretty closely.
Yeah. All right, well, I mean, other than that, everything
Thank you so
read
much.
pretty well. Thanks a lot, appreciate it. And so, I mean, other than those sorts of things, it read like we were just making general corrections, possible language issues. And
I think there's a new policy.
That is
for-
That's the only one.
Yeah, but
No, yeah, no, I knew that one, but I mean, the previous one
oh, the other.
was just
Fine.
fine tuning.
Any other discussion?
No, as a member of the committee, I proposed the changes as brought forward by the committee. Support.
We have a motion and support to bring, approve the recommendations of the Policy and Procedure Committee. Further discussion? Seeing none? Roll call.
Clerk Palovich, yeah. Treasurer Ellery Summers,
Yes.
trustee Reiner,
Yes.
trustee Polly.
Yeah.
Trustee Lappin.
Yes,
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward in new business number 5 is a quote from Midwest Innovators. It's an Alpena company just down this highway from us, of which I've procured a quote for a unique service. This is actually, if you wanna, let's look at your roster. That's a color blue that this quote kind of represents. This is a quote to sandblast and powder coat, which is gonna be a longer lasting finish for all the benches along the 32 corridor. This is kind of a continuation of improvement in that corridor after having done the surface sealing of the bypass and the most recent replacement of all the parking, or the lots and the parking lights and the bollards, but not parking lights. So it's bypass lights. So it's my recommendation to move forward with this quote. There's not any other comparables, unfortunately, that can take this scale of work. This is at the high end that is quoted at $450 per bench. We have 12 benches. Everybody, including the owner of this company, is in hopes that this is going to be on the absolute high side, and hopefully the bill will be less than $5,400, but they don't know. This is new. That's a difficult park bench, and I guess the lion's share of cost is actually in the media blasting, because the cost of the
Is this,
material.
are these the benches that Bauman's was painting for us?
Yes.
So that's insufficient now, or what's going on?
It's just, he does it out of the love of his community.
I know.
But we're getting one bench every 3 years, and so let's just we could do this in one foul swoop.
Is he doing it with powder coat or? Was
No, he does a two
Doing
stage
acrylic,
paint.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have another company in the area. That one of our firefighters is associated with, because my wife and I had, that individual do powder coat, but I don't know whether he could do 12 benches. Yeah, I mean, it took quite a while for our swing, but, it was really excellently done.
Yes, look.
So I'm just asking the question,
So
but
tell me.
I just wonder, how are these benches used very often? Because it just seems like on M32, I mean, they're kind of in odd spots, like, I don't really see very many people walking down 32 and thinking, oh, I'll sit on a bench. Maybe they could be.
I've
placed
seen
in
actually
different-
more utilization of that bypass than I do 23 South bypass. And I've actually, I look at it as, I don't know how many, I can't just pull out a figure, nor would I, but I would tell you this, pull up to any of those benches that are there and say, would I sit in it?
No, I get
And
that.
so,
I
and that's
totally get
kind of, we have it there.
Right,
So unless we want to pull them all together and not have any maintenance costs, that's the state of disrepair that they're in.
and I guess to look at it in a different way, that is building in that area, I mean, with all these hotels and everything else, so probably maybe down the road.
I think
They will be
every
utilized more.
little bit there helps.
Well,
But I agree, I wouldn't sit on them either, probably the way they look.
I've seen people on them that walk their groceries or walk whatever, they've shopped at Walmart and they're walking back towards town. And I've seen them resting there as they carrying their groceries back, or whatever. And I think ice benches, the powder coat will last a long time and easily be cleaned. I mean, power wash those, it doesn't hurt them. But it's a hefty figure.
Trustee Paul.
It has a very nice touch to our 32 corridor. And people won't be afraid to sit down on that, not knowing if they're gonna get paint to come up with. And everybody understands that kind of finish.
Right.
Does this, one thing is, I don't think I'm seeing on here. Does it include them unbolting and rebolting?
No, that will be an in-scope service and ask of our current DPW contract at F&B. I've already had that conversation with Cap.
With a fee on that?
No. During normal business hours. So. It's it's the cleanest way. And like I said, Mr. Bauman, love him. Wonderful. Does tons for the community. But when it comes to a park bench and, not only fire engines, but other paying customers, park bench is always gonna be left on the back burner. And so. I'm just trying to make it look in one foul swoop, make it look good. I'm sure. So this would be my recommendation. And this is actually a little cheaper than he had Cerakote is a term, it's a company that does finishes for guns. And he was looking at that. They have a derivative of that same mixture. It doesn't absorb heat, but they couldn't get any colors really to jive with what we're trying to do. It was more either straight black or they had a lighter gray blue.
I like that.
I
think
just
that's-
realized this is probably from a company that I'm employed by.
It could be, so if you have any
Maybe I
relations.
should
that would-
abstain from voting on this.
Do you have any, well, do you have any economic affiliation with the company that presented this quote? And would you find benefit in moving forward with the motion on this matter, sir?
I wouldn't find benefit, but it is one of the companies I think I work for, seeing who the steward is.
Well, then I would give tip of the hat that you acknowledging the fact that there is a correlation between your private and this. If it has no economic benefit to you, I don't see any need for you to abstain. If you so choose, I'll leave that option for you on the table. sir.
No, that's fine, as long as I make it known.
Yep, no, you made it known, and that's a wonderful responsibility that you fulfilled. Steve, did you have any other comments? I guess at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to move forward with the quote that's presented. If not,
I'll make that motion.
we have a motion on the table. There's support. I'll support it. But this far,
It's been a while
Si-
since you've. supported
I haven't
anything.
supported many things. But park benches, giddy up. So we have a motion and support on the table. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Treasurer Ellery Summers,
Yes.
trustee Reiner,
Yes,
trustee Polly,
Yes.
trustee Lappin,
Yes.
clerk Flavich, yes, supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Okay, moving on, we have a recommendation from chief, as to paid on call raises. Chief, would you like to, stand at the podium, sir?
Good afternoon, everybody, or evening. We've spent several hours, I guess you would say, putting figures together, bringing them towards the personnel committee, running them back and forth between the committees, myself. I think we've got a pretty good product here to finally give our paid on call staff a raise. And if anybody, they don't understand how this is laid out, I can certainly explain it, but does anybody have any questions
Can
on
you
it?
explain it? 'Cause
Yeah.
It confuses me.
Sure. So currently, we pay hourly. And what we need to do is we need to have an incentive out there to make a reason why a paid on call wants to get out of bed at February 20th at 20 below zero. And 90% of, or well, not, let me stick to the facts here. 85% of our 911 calls are less than 2 hours. So our proposal is that we would pay a first responder, a paid on call staff member 2 hours for the first call. So let's say they go out on a call for any medical or any fire. If it lasts less than 2 hours, they would get $26. If it extends into the third hour, they would get paid by the quarter hour after the third hour at $15 an hour.
Not after the third hour, after the second hour. they
But
get paid by the
yes,
quarter.
for the third hour. of-
Yeah.
Into the third hour, I guess I should have said. Yes, thanks for correcting that.
So really, just to back up, so really they're getting, say, $13 an hour for the first 2 hours, but then 15 after that, based on quarter hour.
And always have a minimum of 2 hours.
Okay. yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, that is
And that
correct,
makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't want to get out of bed either.
right?
Do that at 2 AM.
So, and I'm thinking that that'll make some incentive. We still, excuse me, we still need to put more staff on it at some point, but we want to keep the people that we have there active and coming as much as we possibly can.
So my question is, and I've talked to you about this before, but it hasn't been answered yet, is this, currently we have a tiered system based on how much training you have, whether you're just a firefighter, I don't mean just a firefighter, but only firefighting, or if you're a firefighter, MFR, this does not account for that. And I think there needs to be something of a tiered system to incentivize people to get more training.
And we have talked about that may add confusion to the reins. I'm just thinking.
I guess I don't understand what confusion.
Well, it's gonna be a lot more legwork on your part of figuring out the tiers and different things like that, or my part and your part. This would be a flat rate across the board.
So what's our incentive for people to get more training?
They're gonna come and do their training. They're either gonna do it or they're not. That's the way I look at it. We've got people that'll,
So I'm not sure you're understanding what I'm saying. So somebody goes through and gets their firefighter 1 and 2.
Mhm.
What is the incentive now to go get your MFR or EMT?
I guess I don't know if there is an incentive. Typically, when they join us, they have that set in mind that that's what they want to become to help out the department.
I like the idea of the incentive or the tiered system because of the incentive,
Mhm.
but. I mean, just to have this is huge, just to get this much done, that I would even say approve this and then work on the tiered system for a future date.
Now, I will point out that we currently have a form that has a tier system on it, kind of. It needs some work, and I'm gonna talk to Michelle about that actually tomorrow. It was on my list of things to do today, but never got there. The current list, we need to change how that lays out, and then we could put that tiered system in very easily. So
I guess I feel like this should have all been wrapped up together. Because now it's gotta come back.
in my opinion, I think that we're muddying the waters at that point. We want involvement, and I believe that you're gonna get that involvement with this, with this increase.
I disagree with muddy in the waters.
Yeah, I think that the intent is true and pure, and I don't think that there's anybody at this board that doesn't think that paid on call deserve a raise for the services that they provide. But I think to Michelle's point is, and to Laura's point is, it's not gonna muddy the waters to pay, we have a couple paid on call with us right now. One may have more certifications. I don't think that it would muddy the water to show that appreciation. That's that retainment.
Mhm.
It's not just the 2 hours, it's the 2 hours and the division of saying, your 2 hours has this much value. Or I think, is that where you're kind of going of, if I just came in as firefighter 1, 2, and somebody has toots, could have a paramedic. That skill set, I don't see how that muddies the waters to have that skill set acknowledged at economically.
And I've even mentioned that in previous revisions that we've talked about.
I'm not sure.
In one of the
We
other,
mentioned what?
in one of the other proposals, I did say that we could consider a tiered system in there. Then we
Well,
reworked it.
I requested a tiered system.
Right.
Or some type of incentive program to be with this.
And I don't have a problem. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. We've currently got a tiered system in place right now. You could use that hourly wage ×2 for the first 2 hours. Whatever tier they fit into. Now, if they come to us and they have all their certs, firefighter 1 and 2, they're a paramedic. We know that they're gonna draw the top salary, but they're still not gonna exceed $26 for the first 2 hours.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Just from a housekeeping standpoint, if somebody has if somebody is a paramedic, and if we are MFR, can they even?
No, that isn't the point, it's to show that regard for
I
the skill
just
set.
wanted to clarify that
But
highest.
currently, we pay someone who has firefighter 1 and 2 only. Different from someone who has firefighter 1 and 2 and their MFR.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I just
And then
wasn't
there's
sure.
also a different, I think EMT too.
Then there's a difference between EMT.
Right, and man.
Yes, by all means, sorry.
I don't think we can do this financially, but I've always believed and wanted to get to a point that our paid on call get paid for being on call, whether they get a call or not. That's what I had when I worked for McCosta County, and that was strictly ambulance, but we got paid spiff. And I don't remember what it was, but we had to then make the call. I mean, if there was a call out, we had to be there. but we were paid to set that time aside in our personal life, not have alcohol in our system, those kinds of things. That we then were responsible to answer that call. I don't know if we can do that financially, but that's one of the things I've always thought would be a wonderful way to go with a paid on call system. Right now, we don't know. I think they do, but no one's told me they don't, but we don't have any hook to make sure that paid on call come to a scene.
So typically, if there's a call, could it be that one paid on call shows up or maybe 3 show up? Is it that you never know kind of how many are gonna show up?
Technically, we don't know.
So you're not even guaranteed that one is gonna, or are you always guaranteed one will show?
Right now, we're at 0.59% out of 74% of the calls. 0.59 of a paid on call shows up to a run.
Which means you don't always get a paid on call.
That is correct.
Which means if you have a structure fire, you can't even make entrance to fight the fire or to rescue anybody unless you have 4 people there. Right?
That's definitely the scenario that we live with in this township, that that's how much is important that we count on our paid on call. Now, I will tell you that there's some local departments, or a local department, and I won't mention the name, but they do have a weekend staffing routine that X, Y, and Z, this is their shift for the weekend, and but they get paid to stay in the township, and they're there, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or something like that the next day, so they have weekend coverage. I mean, those are all things we could look at down the road to guarantee that type of service, that we have a lottery that we maybe look at who's available. Can we put at least 2 paid on calls so we can meet the 2 in 2 out staffing guidelines? That's certainly something.
Well, and that means then we pay up to $26, whether they get called out or not. And the first 2 hours, they don't get any additional pay for, but anything over that, they get paid. But can we do that?
But how do you schedule that when?
You schedule it.
That would be that. Well, you can say that, but you have to keep in mind that these folks they're working a full-time job
Yeah.
at other
That's
places.
how you can schedule somebody.
It's a voluntary,
that
this
is
department that I'm
voluntary.
talking about, it's a voluntary setup that they use, that, hey, the chief says, hey, can you do this weekend? I need to. And that's how they do it. It's a different structure.
Since I know people who have worked on volunteer fire departments where they had to work one 24-hour shift or one 12-hour shift every month.
Mhm.
And they had to do it, they either came in after work and did a night shift or did a weekend. So it is done.
Oh, sure. There's all kinds of scenarios out there, but it comes with a cost.
Yeah.
It's gonna come with a cost.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm sure if I brought it back to the membership that, hey, we can do one 24-hour shift a month. Okay, so are we staffing that for fire and EMS, or we just EMS? Because we have some people that just do EMS. We have some people that
Which
do both.
that is to my incentive to
Right.
get
Right.
people to have both.
And then there's some people that are never going to do both. But you can't be real picky in today's day and age. With majority of our runs are medical. And one of the next
To
one of
be
the next
incentive
subject.
To get your medical.
Yeah, I mean,
Because the majority of our runs.
and one of the things that'll be coming up on the agenda here shortly is the Mabus mutual aid box alarm system. I'll be explaining that in a little bit. So
Before we go there, I just have one other question. When would the clock start and when does it end? So if you're paying, for example, I get the first 2 hours, you don't have to explain that. But the quarterly pay, does that like when the fire's out, the clock stops, or when you get home, the clock stops?
So when the pager goes off and they're putting their boots on to respond, obviously the clock start ticking. Okay, when our full-time staff come back to the station and enter the times in, they get a chip sheet from Central Dispatch. It tells what time we're cleared, unless they have duties to come back and help the full-time guy do hose washing or whatever it is that needs to be done, cleaning trucks that got dirty or whatever. that's the shift personnel's opportunity to say, hey, I need you to come back and help me wash hose and they will get paid for that, but it will be logged in their daily. And the shift guy or gal, whoever it might be, will be the person that enters that into the spreadsheet. And that's the time will go off.
And so, and that's, and as you, Michelle kind of addressed her question of having a tiered system, which I think is a sound approach. Is that, what is that control? How is it logged? How are we going to define it? To go to Steve's point, and as I asked you, is it upon dispatch? Is it the chip sheet? Is it, because there's a ton of variables and it's an emergency scene. So the last thing that you're trying to do is think about how are you going to clock your time and who's actually on a call. I get all that. But then my other question was, paid on call, peak question mark. Says peak question marks in round. And then doesn't show up, but it's on the, so those were my questions that I threw to you is, what are your controls? What does that spreadsheet look like? You have in here that the on-duty shift personnel will be responsible for it. But we don't know what that spreadsheet looks like. We don't.
Well, and like you said, there is a lot of variables because a lot of times the full timer might be on the call and he knows the paid on calls responding and he tells them to cover station instead of coming to the call. So.
Or says disregard. And so that's I want to make sure that the paid on calls know it there, that I don't want them to have questions. So if I call in and you disregard me as I see, am I still getting that $2 or that 2 hours? And I don't want, those are questions that could be asked in fairly short order. As soon as runs start happening. I think what I'm hearing here is maybe this is something where we can fill in some missing gaps and address this in its entirety.
Well, that was my question. Has the fire committee gone over this and?
No, it went through, this has only gone through personnel. But both the questions that are asked at this table have been questions that have been previously asked. And so I think I'll work with Michelle on shoring up I think there's only 3 derivatives of a tiered system. I don't see that muddying the water, but I want to make sure. I know that everybody on the paid on call list needs a raise.
Basically, if I may, you either have a certified firefighter or you have a certified firefighter with a medical license, or you just have somebody that just has a medical license. So there's really only 3 tiers at that point.
So I don't think that muddies the water at all.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
So I guess is that something we should, instead of passing one and then coming back and amending with additional information, should we just do it all in one foul swoop?
Well, I feel like these guys have waited a long time. And so unfortunately, I would like to do it in one full swoop, but I don't want to put these guys waiting another month.
Right.
Because this wasn't done completely and didn't answer all of our questions. So I don't want to penalize the paid on calls. So I will make a motion to approve the raise to the paid on calls.
Does that include, is there a distinction between the paid on calls and the full time? Because I see there's a full time number.
This is just for the paid on calls. Because the full time have their own union contract.
Okay, so if they come in off duty, then.
They get, that's all
That's
handled
covered by that contract.
by that.
So why do we
contract.
have a full time on call 911?
That's just to show the dollar amount that
Because they get paid out of the
That's
same
based out
GL.
of the
out of
contract.
that contract.
Okay, thanks.
I'll support the motion.
So we have a motion and support for their discussion. Yes, Laura.
Can we amend the motion to say?
I was just gonna amend it, but
Okay.
maybe you're amending it the
Well,
same.
I was just
going
gonna
to.
say approve it as is, but work on those 3 tiers and.
Within it for the next month, I'd like to see that.
That's
And
not a
just
problem.
have that be a part of
Yes.
it.
I think that could be
ask
a
the friendly amendment
quick
and the control.
discussion with personnel committee.
And Are
Pardon me,
you,
I'm sorry.
Quick discussion with personnel committee. I think we can have that hammered out in probably 5 minutes.
oh, I think so too. And so the amendment is to
Include
incorporate a tiered
Tiered.
set.
the 3 tiers.
And my ask is also in that same motion, if agreeable, to include the documentation of how it's going to be tracked. And make sure that everybody that's on a paid on call or a full-time responding in that capacity, if they had a question, they could look at it and say, okay, I know where I'm at.
It'd be good to have some input.
I'm okay
I'm
with that
good with
amendment.
that.
I'm good with
Yeah.
that too.
So we have
I made the
a motion with a friendly
Yeah.
amendment.
Yeah.
The, support.
Hope you can figure out how to read your own motion.
Yes.
So, with that being said, would you like to, could you please clarify the motion?
Oh, yeah. can you
As amended.
repeat what-
Yeah, okay, I can read the shorthand here.
bet
To
you asked.
approve the paid on call raise as presented with the addition of incorporating a 3 tiers system within a month
For next meeting.
Next meeting,
for next meeting
or next regular schedule.
and documentation
A tracking mechanism.
of tracking.
Everybody clear on the motion? Yes, Laura?
I just have a question. Why do we have to bring it back?
Because we have to vote on the
We would have to
tiers,
pass on.
how much they're gonna be paid for each
Any
tier.
differential.
So that will need to be brought back and approved by the board, because it's a raise.
It's just.
Right, but we kind of already know what those amounts are.
No,
right?
we really don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
I
So,
know, I
no.
thought,
Yeah.
like,
So, no.
okay,
No,
I'm good with that.
So clarification, so that leads us with no further discussion, to a roll call, please.
trustee Reiner,
Yes.
trustee Polly,
Yes.
trustee Lappin.
Yes,
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes.
And we appreciate you
Can I
guys.
ask the chief one other question?
Yes, sir.
Just what's your total active paid on call rate?
17, 15 or 17.
But I think the word was active.
Oh,
6.
well, we're
7.
we're probably at about 12 right now. Since Jim has been taking over the training, we've been doing very well, getting activity and involvement. No, they're not always there at the same time, right? So people work Wednesday night, people work too. So we're scattered still, and it'd be nice to have everybody at one time, but that's not gonna happen in the real world. It's
Well,
just
from the angle I was coming from, it would be nice if you could have them give you kind of, these are the times I would likely be available, so you kind of have that in the back of your head. Or have
And
that-
we kind of do that when people are gonna go out of town, they kind of let us know, they let the full-time shift guys know, hey, I'm out of town for a week, like Tim Luggy's gonna go fishing in Canada. He lets me know, or he lets one of the full-time guys know, hey, I'm not gonna be around, which is really good. We're getting that network going and it's working pretty well. So,
Okay, next item of business is the MDNR Volunteer Fire Capacity Grant Program. Chief.
okay, this is a yearly grant that the DNR offers local departments. It's a matching fund grant. We've already applied for this, so we've met the deadline of the application. But if we were to be awarded the grant, we need to have the approval from this board to be awarded or the opportunity to match that fund. And they will grant up to $4,999. And if you'll see on page 1 of the grant application, we've put in for well, you have to list your priorities of what gear, what stuff that you would like to have. In the end, it's just a list of our priorities. The DNR will judge which one of those 4 that they want to award the grant for. So, but any one of those 4 items we need desperately. The gear washer, something to meet NFPA and MIOSHA standards, where you should be having a gear extractor washer to wash the gear after every fire. And right now we don't have a spare set of gear backup for our folks. So, but getting the proper washer, we can take it down to the south station, put our gear in the hose dryer, dry it as quickly as possible. So we get people back in business. But these are some of the items that we put on our project description list. I'm just asking for the board's approval. If we are so awarded an opportunity with this grant, that we would be able to do that matching fund up to $4,999 or whatever our project is going for at that time. But I at least want to be able to do the matching fund, and that would be out of the general equipment 205-336-974.
We have an ask that we technically, do we have to make a motion to earmark said funds for this grant, or what are the?
I don't believe so.
I have a question.
Yes, by all means.
So the 3 sets of structural PPE, that's 12,000. It's a matching grant. we would need to match 6,000.
Well, they're only gonna give us.
They're
up
gonna
to
give us
49.
Yeah, they're capped at.
So, but I'm looking at a project, if we were to be able to get that money, that would be basically seed money to buy the structural turnout gear. And we would be able to get 3 sets, because we could take that.
So this is basically your wish list. And if and you're hoping that out of that wish list, they'll go, okay, we'll buy that.
Right.
So, but I'm wondering if, do you have any idea when these will be awarded?
I believe it's in not July. I've got the answer here. Actually, I gave that cover letter to Supervisor Skibby, I believe. I think it's September, if I remember right.
Sometime in the next couple of months.
Right.
So I wonder if you shouldn't also apply for a community foundation grant right now. And if that money were awarded, then that could be the matching money. The matching money, as far as DNR concerned, they don't care where it comes from, right? As long as it comes.
Yeah, no, they really don't care as long as we pay our share of the. We wouldn't be even, DNR would give us the 4,999.
Right.
And we would, if we were so lucky to get another community foundation grant for another $5,000 or whatever it is, we could put that towards whatever purchase we wanted, whatever the DNR chooses out of this list of priorities. So,
Well,
So to that
yeah.
end, we don't need a motion really for this business
No,
item.
no, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help
Yeah.
push
well,
the dollar along.
Yep, I agree, but I'm just looking at this, and if we don't have to earmark said funds to a match to a GL. Then I would just ask that the minutes reflect that. This match is to be utilized out of the GL that was recommended by T. So that concludes that business, since it's been submitted. Wildland was spelled wrong, I just got that.
oh, did I spell it wrong?
Yeah.
24 years of doing it. I don't know how to spell.
Willen?
Will it?
Yeah.
You don't really
Willen?
want it?
Willen?
Huh.
So on to the
That'll
next,
get the Lansing and get laughed at, I can tell you that. All right, next on the my list here is the Mavis Michigan Mutual Aid Box Alarm System. It's a statewide resource that's available for us to belong to at no cost initially for anything. It opens us to have a regional resource availability for mutual aid. Supervisor Skibby and myself, we've been to, well, we started a meeting out at Central Dispatch with the Mavis system. I've been to a couple other meetings that the city fire has been hosting. We had a presentation from the folks from Mavis. And what this is, you guys probably heard about the big sawmill fire up in the UP that they needed all kinds of resources. All right. They needed aerial trucks. They needed everything. They used this Mavis box alarm system to pull those resources throughout the entire state to go help them fight this fire. Okay. Now, as far as Mavis goes, you can use them for the first operational period as a mutual aid. But if you extend beyond that first mutual aid or that first operational period, then there's a cost associated with it. But if you get something to that point where you need to pull resources from out of town to help you, there's a desperate situation going on.
So what is the cost associated with it?
There is no cost.
Well,
But I thought you said after the first initial
until
period.
absolute worst case scenario,
Right.
and you could never calculate. It could be a
If
massive
something's
fire
really
that.
big.
always happens.
Okay.
And a lot of times when something like that happens, the governor will declare a state of emergency, and then that would probably go away. But that's not a guarantee. But locally, all the fire chiefs and all the boards in the area, from what I understand, all the chiefs have been going back to their boards. Maple Ridge, I believe, is going to approve theirs. Presqu'île's already doing it. The cities in Mavis.
So outside of the city and Presqu'île, who are the parties within the county that have already declared moving forward with Mavis?
I do believe Maple Ridge that I know of.
I thought you said Maple Ridge is just going to their board. They've already gone to their board?
I believe they've already gone to the board. And they actually have a Mavis meeting going right tonight at 6 o'clock where all the chiefs are there again and some township officials are going to be there or city officials. To me, it's a win-win, kind of a no-brainer that you have this in your back pocket. I mean, we currently have mutual aids agreements in place with every member of the Thunder Bay area firefighters. But let's say, for instance, we have Home Depot on fire or a big box store. We have one ladder, one aerial truck in the area. That's the city of Alpena. That's a 30-year-old truck. They could also be involved down at DPI on a fire of their own. And now we've got nothing, but I can call from Mavis and get resources coming to help us. You know, so this would be one operational period. They're going to come in, do their thing, and then, you know, we'll let them go home without, you know, unless the governor were to step in and say, hey, this is a major incident and we need to.
It won't be happening at a box store.
Well,
No.
I was gonna say, wouldn't the reality be that this might be a forest fire or something catastrophic that would happen?
Could be.
But don't worry about answering that question. My other question is, this doesn't. If we have a fire which requires the usual mutual aid that we do now, Mavis is not involved in this, right?
That's
It
correct.
wouldn't have any impact on this. What we're really talking about is significant situations, whether it be flood, tornadoes, or
Right.
giant fires or whatever.
So
Feed
when Lake,
ride scale.
when Lake Sanford, the dam went out of Lake Sanford,
Yeah.
they activated Mavis from all over the state to come
well,
in
that's a
for
good example. It
search and
doesn't
rescue.
necessarily be a-
Let's say the 7 Mile Dam goes.
Yeah.
And it's wiped out everything downstream and we need
Okay,
resources.
let's not talk about that.
Yeah, so, yes, Russ.
I'm presuming here, but there's gotta be a contract. Gotta be a document that we sign an agreement to. And I sure would like to see that before I vote on this.
As far as I know, there's no contract.
So my other question
There's
is.
gotta be some liability somewhere,
Yeah.
either when we call somebody in, we have liability to pay those people. Or we have liability to pay our staff when we go out.
Let me ask you this question. Would you like to have somebody from Mavis come and address the board?
Well, yeah, and if
I
they
think
have an
that'd be
underlying
probably
document, I'd
beneficial.
like to have it read. by
Or at
our
least a
attorney.
committee of the board? So, I mean, you give me your direction and I'll make it happen.
That's a question to me.
Bring some more info. I mean, I guess, because this is something that was introduced into our community by Bert Francisco. It holds a lot of merit. But I tend to agree that anytime you have a state level function, especially utilizing federal monies, there's a forum for everything.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that there is, but then
I'm
as a
looking at it.
countywide approach, I mean, when we initially started this conversation with Chief Edmonds and Central Dispatch. It was under the guise of the origin of the Gaylord Mavis.
Right?
Now, are we actually now separated? Because that was one of the discussion points of breaking away from the Gaylord derivative to only solely focus on the northeastern more.
Right. And that's gonna be being talked about tonight. But if we stay a member of the region, like Gaylord, when they had the big tornado come through, they had people from all over the state coming up with different type of vehicles to help out and search and rescue team, dogs, whatever.
This is put together under
Sorry.
section 5 of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Act. So there is an agreement, but I don't think it's a contractual, I mean, it's
Right.
clearly some sort of agreement. I'm looking right at it. That,
Laura's got a question.
I would
so.
like to have someone, even if they zoomed in or came here, I think it would be something good for our whole board to hear
Not a
what
problem.
this does instead of just
Yeah.
the fire committee or.
I mean, it
person.
sounds good. but
I think
I'd like-
in essence, it's
think
definitely a
It
positive.
would make all of us.
I know
Yeah.
anything too good sounds to be too good, it sounds to be good, is probably not good or whatever I'm trying to say there.
If it sounds too good to be true. it
There
usually
you go.
is.
Thank you.
But, I mean, like, there's gotta be something you fill out or sign. It's not like you can't call and say, hey,
Yeah.
we're in.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
No.
So the way I understood it,
Top.
the way I understood it at the last meeting when we had the regional director there, we basically just go through and the chiefs in the area would agree on these box alarm cards on how we'd want to set up response to certain calls. And we can do that locally as well.
Yeah, and that there was that continuation of the conversation is, yeah, you check in the resources and the box alarms and how our response should be quantified. But I think what is being asked of at this point is that let's have a Zoom presentation, either if not for our next meeting. Figure out a date in the immediate future. And that way we can talk to the people that know the program since it's so new.
Right, and they may even have a,
Michigan too, so.
they may even have a canned program that they can give us that I can send to everybody, every board member. This is what,
Anything would be better than,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I
I mean-
think that you have by a nod of this board, you have positive interest.
Yeah.
But this is only one slice of that entire.
that's not a
pie.
problem. I will talk to the regional director and find out what we can do.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion at this point in time, a motion to table, joining the Michigan Mavis, system at this time until we have.
Oh, the next regular, or not the
next-
next regular, but next meeting. board meeting.
So we have more information.
Yeah, I'll make that motion too.
I'll support it.
It's been moved and supported for the conversation.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I have, the motion was minor. The motion is to table until we have more information. That's,
Yes, about benefits and obligations. Yes.
okay.
And there, like I said, there is an agreement. It's pretty usual. Got the
Boilerplate.
insurance clause, the indemnification clause, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So is it possible they would maybe do something at our next meeting, like during? the
I
regular-
guess I'll work with chief to try to coordinate what their schedule is. I mean,
I'll talk to.
it's unfortunate that they were having their meeting with county representatives and elected officials tonight.
Did we vote on the motion? to table?
No,
No, we did not,
We're gonna do a
but
voice
is there
vote.
any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of tabling to the subsequent meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same. It's been tabled. The next item of business is a ratified TA that we achieved today. Mr. Lieutenant Stevens is with us this evening, as well as our wonderful bus driver, Miss Helen Mills. And so we're able to, after some good discussion today, solidify a tentative agreement in regards to our bargaining unit of the IAFF 1859. And like I said, President Stevens is with us this evening. Are there any questions? I do have copies of the TA that I can pass out. That might be
I think that might be a good place to
But
start.
is the recommendation of those of you on the,
recommendation from at least my seat in the personnel committee is
I would
to
recommend,
move forward with the TA as presented.
and I will agree with Supervisor Skibby.
The next discussion.
What?
Do we always do the contract for the calendar year, not like the, or this is for 2 years?
This is a 2-year contract.
Okay.
In it, I can just give you a quick synopsis. 2-year contract, first year 5%, second year 3%. There was a good give and take. We also have a change in paid holidays. We also then have wages. I'm just, yeah, I'm looking over your shoulder because
Yeah,
I let all
you want mine?
topics go down the road. I think that, it would be best utilized in your time.
that's right.
I should have forecasted that 3 minutes ago. 3 winks with the right
Put
eye.
this back. Chief is a little taller on one end than I am. Good evening again, board members. Good to see you all. Good to be seen. This is a 2-year contract in which we have identified a number of items that frankly, we have talked about over the last couple of rounds of contract negotiations, but never really been able to kind of get things together. You will see on your first page, we did in fact add, I believe the number was 2, Lieutenant Stevens can confirm, but we modified how we pay Christmas Eve, so that it was a full holiday instead of just during an 8-hour window, which is what the contract currently provides. And we added a holiday, which I believe was New Year's Eve as well. That one was solidified in December, so that's been a minute. We also established an acting chief rate of pay. We did not previously have anything in place, nor really direction as to how the chief would designate someone, so that in his absence, if he chooses, for instance, to take a great vacation somewhere, we know who to go to for our direction, who's going to be responsible, and they're being compensated for serving in that capacity for us. Supervisor Skibby has identified the wage package that was, again, we agreed to in December. The most recent additions are the acknowledgements to those individuals serving in the lieutenant or the training officer capacity. Those individuals will receive a $500 stipend, and for full disclosure, that will be spread out over their year. So in effect, it acts as an hourly bump, but it is spread out over the course of the year. And we are looking forward to continuing discussions about those roles so that we can make sure that we are holding them accountable to what you need and that they are able to effectively communicate to you what they are doing so that if there are reasons to discuss further in the future, changes to their wages, we would do that. Second page, top of the page is just a clerical cleanup. We were reading that and realized the word unless doesn't make sense there, so we fixed it. The next item is trade time. If you are not familiar, it is a very common practice in fire departments across the country that there is the opportunity to trade shifts without any harm or detriment to the employer. What we worked on this time around, again, after good discussion at a couple of sessions in December, was making sure we understand what the mechanism is, what the discussion point is, so that if Trustee Reinhardt, for instance, was saying, hey, who's at station, at North Station today, he's going to have an idea, or he has the ability to call and ask if that's something that matters to him. But also more importantly, if we have an incident where we can't find someone and we think that they're supposed to be on duty and there wasn't good documentation, how can we clean that up? So we worked on that with the bargaining unit, and you'll see that section addressed at the top of page 2. The next big discussion, again, with the department membership was Article 8, hours of work, trade time, and overtime on a bigger scale. Historically, this department has functioned under something called big and small overtime, which is my words, not the clerk's words, but I would suggest maybe has given a lot of headache to the clerk's department when running payroll. We have implemented what is allowable under the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is to say that the first 212 hours of straight time that are worked in a 28-day period are at straight time. And anything over that is overtime, as opposed to calculating it on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. Again, that is something that is provided for under federal law and allows us to acknowledge the flexibility and the different types of scheduling that you have within a fire department. They're not working an 8 to 5. They're working 24 on, 48 off, right, Chris? And so this is something that this will be new to the parties. We will certainly, if this board ratifies the TA, we'll need to take a look at payroll and make sure everybody was paid properly and that we didn't mess anything because we didn't have it in place at the time. This is new. And I expect that the parties will work together on making sure that's all cleaned up. Article 9, paid time off. You see references to deletion of the 3rd and 4th sentence. That is just old language about when we converted to PTO a couple contracts ago. We've also changed the PTO cap to 400 hours from 600 hours. We have mutually talked about physical fitness and the desire that we should encourage and facilitate increased physical fitness, maintaining good physical fitness. I know I should sign up to do that as well. But that is addressed in your contract moving forward, giving some flexibility to have a good system in place for the evaluations. And that again has been something worked on very well with the unit over the last couple of years. The next item is uniforms. I'm speaking at 100 miles an hour, but if you need something, throw a shoe, okay? Let me know. The next item is we're actually shifting to something I think that all of us were excited about. I would call this a step in the direction of a more professional department in the sense that you are going to be providing uniforms as opposed to saying to the department members, you all figure out what you're going to wear and where you should get it from and how you're going to get that cost. So we know that we're going to have some adjustment as we get that going. Chiefs worked with us to provide us a sample list, which you see. We worked through that together with the bargaining unit. I'm excited to see what that looks like for you. So you get some consistency and it takes a little bit off the bargaining unit members' shoulders that they're actually getting their uniform from their employer. So that is new for you. And certainly we'll have a cost associated with it, but I think it's a good forward facing and internal issue.
Just a quick question. So, and I obviously haven't read through this, but if somebody retires or they quit or whatever, is that addressed in this as well?
Yeah, anything that we have purchased is ours. So that would come back. It would be returned in, right? So things, for instance, that are going to have Lieutenant Stevens' name on it in 100 years when he retires, they're going to come back. And unless we have another Lieutenant Stevens, I don't know how much use you would get out of something that was embroidered, for instance. But if they are our standard t-shirts that don't have names, that's something that can be reused if needed. Again, lots of discretion granted to the chief to acknowledge if there's repair or replacement needs over time. So that shifts the burden, I think, back to the administrative home that most fire departments will place it in, again, as you're shifting toward a more professional, hopefully more fully staffed over the coming years. Type.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Because in the beginning of this, it says that it's retroactive to the beginning of January 1st, 2023. So does that affect like? I mean, I know wages, but what about like the the trade time and all of that? I mean, is
So
that something you have to? go
We're
back
gonna
and
have to
figure?
go through every payroll from January first through today
Okay,
and
So,
figure out how
that's
much they
huge.
should have been paid and what they were paid, and then we will do a special payroll for the difference.
Which we would normally do a retro payment anyway if we were past expiration. It's something that we have historically done. So that work to go back and look to January 1 is already happening. The additional element that is interesting and probably going to require some migraine headache medication of some kind is the overtime review, but I still suspect that that will be, once done, the Band-Aid is ripped off and taken care of.
great, thank you.
Back page is, top of that back page is really a continuation of something that already exists in the contract, which is the acknowledgement. I'm going to call it the acknowledgement that we are operating without what I think everybody would consider a full staff for a 2-station department. I think Chief would agree with me that that's typically a 9. We want to have people on hand to refill in when people are on vacation. We're not quite there yet. This language has been in place in your contract for the last couple of rounds. We had a letter of agreement dating back to 2020 in various forms, acknowledging that if needed, Chief can fill a shift as however he needs to, because we know that it's not safe and good service if we're having the same people working shift after shift after shift with no break. It's not safe. There are liability concerns that Trustee Lappin, I'm sure, loses sleep over too. And so this is.
That's how we lost his hair.
Yeah, I hear you. I got some of that on my own. So we have continued that language, again, with the agreement of the union. You'll see again, it contains a sunset provision. The idea behind those sunset provisions are that the parties have to come back and talk about whether that still needs to stay in there. So I like those provisions. They hold both parties accountable to coming to the table and saying, here's why I'd like it to continue. Here's why I don't. And then reason needs to prevail about how we go through that process. You'll see just a couple other changes. Right now, there's some odd language about how scheduling is accomplished. We're just clarifying that that's the chief's job unless and until it's delegated. Doesn't really say that right now. Seems like a pretty basic thing we should clean up for management rights provision. And we've accomplished that. References to Article 23B through G. This is actually something that came to us in good discussion with the department. It's a discussion about how to manage overtime and scheduling that my words, I'm speaking. I'm sure Stevens will throw something at me if I'm incorrect, but I think kind of as a carryover from prior members of the department, this department doesn't really feel the need to go through the rigmarole as described right now in terms of how those shifts are filled and what that process will be like. They feel like they're working pretty well together to accomplish that, and I'm happy to accommodate that. Less concern about how we can get tripped up in our own contract, and I would hate to have language in our contract that both parties know we are not following. So we removed it. And then the last substantive item is, again, that recognition that I just mentioned a little bit ago, that we need to ensure our own members' safety as well as the safety of our citizenry. And so we have a mutually agreed, essentially a 72-hour limit that you can work 72 hours, but after that, we need you to go home. There is a carve out that says, look, if it's something wildly dramatic, maybe you're going to be using MABUS for it, that maybe that's a different story, but we've provided the exception opportunity, and that is something in the chief's control as opposed to a member being kind of in a position where they have to decide whether they're going to pick up yet another shift and work 96 or 100. And we just don't want them to do that. So we are appreciative of that change as well. And the last one is moving from Roman numerals to Arabic numerals, because there was a lot of confusion about that in the contract. So.
On the Arabic.
Yeah.
I just want one question. When you said that relative to, I think it was scheduling, that effectively right now everything is working just fine, so might as well just scrub whatever was in the other agreement and scrub it out. If I'm mistaken, please tell me. But just because something's working really nice right now doesn't mean it's always going to.
Agreed.
Nice. Does that mean that there's a provision, or is it working in such a way now that it's not necessary to have a contract? Is it working because there's scheduling that is effective? Is it a personnel that's working well together? Well, tell me what that means.
Yep, absolutely. So it's really actually things. So the primary reason why we were all agreeable to eliminating those terms is because it has not been followed for the past several years at all. So we have both sides breaching the contract. We should have been grieving each other, I guess, in the meantime. And then the second reason was that, again, this is me summarizing, and I won't put this to anybody's names, but my understanding is that the language that was in there about, well, we're not going to offer Trustee Reinhardt the opportunity unless we've offered these other two people twice and then 3 ways from Sunday and gotten it that way, was because there was some under prior employees in the department, there was a lot of infighting about who was getting overtime and when. And this group is saying, we have a system that's working, let's work with that system. And I'm comfortable with that because, again, number one, I don't want contract language we're not following. And number two, we always have the right, if we're going to be coming back to the table, to say, hey, you guys have been causing us some headaches and we'd like to talk about it. Or they can come in and say, we're causing ourselves headaches. Can you help us by putting some language in place? You can either do that during contract negotiations proper, like what we've been doing, or certainly at any time, the parties could come forward and do that together through letter of agreement, even mid-contract.
Okay, now, I was just, when you said that, I'm like, as long as it's working and as long as we've got consensus.
Correct.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
Just a question on Article 8 with the override of Article 7. Do I understand then that trade time will not impact overtime? That's a simple.
Correct. By law, it cannot. And yes, this confirms that.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea is even if you're working overtime when you work for me, we're playing magical presto changeo and payroll, and it's not happening that way. Very astute observation.
Any other questions for Ms. Mintz?
Sounds like it was very.
Amicable.
Yes. That's wonderful.
Lizzie, I don't think you talk fast.
Really? I'll work on it. I'm a little slow this year. It's a rough year, Norm. I'll get back by 2024. I'm here.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Of
Ms.
course.
Mintz. With that being said, on the table before us, we have a TA
Move
that
to
was.
I will
ratified
support
by-
it.
You had a motion and support to ratify the TA for IAFF 1859. That being said, any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Trustee Polly,
Yes.
trustee Lappin,
Yes.
clerk Plavich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. That concludes all the new business. Moving forward, this is the second opportunity for public comment. If there is any public comment online, please use the bottom taskbar. Click on the ellipsis, raise your hand, send a message. If you have any comments so that we can address your public comment. Seeing no public comment online and none in person at this point in time. I would entertain a motion at this point in time to exit open session and go into closed session. Is there, do you have a motion?
I didn't take.
Okay. Do we have a motion to go into? closed
I'll make
session
that motion.
Under written legal.
Support.
opinion? Been moved and supported. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Trustee Lappin,
Yes.
clerk Plavich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. We're not officially in closed session at 7:38 PM. Okay, so we are now back in open session. Is there any further discussion from the good of the order? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. We have a motion by Laura and support by Steve. Further discussion. Seeing none, this meeting will be ordered at 7 PM.